Welcome to Happy Times and Places, a positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast in which I, Toby Haydock, watch a Doctor Who story chosen by a friend of mine and have to guess what my guest's favourite thing about each instalment might be.
Hello, Toby. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Tom, and I'm an associate professor specialising in popular music. Today, I'm recommending The Keeper of Traken.
Hello, everybody. I'm sitting in my chair, but I'm unable to do anything except talk to you. Info dump, so I would be a perfectly acceptable Keeper of Traken, were it not for the fact that I'm unable to maintain peace even in my own head, let alone across an entire planet. Although I would say that on the evidence of what we've seen so far, I'm not sure the Keeper does a particularly good job with his easily bribable chief of police and the lady he sent to look after a statue, able to manipulate the planet in such a way that John Woodnut's been killed. The nicest, the wisest man on the planet's been killed, and the most respectable is now sort of held prisoner, along with Doctor Who and Adric. Anyway, here I am, Toby Haydock, talking to you from my chair with my long white beard. I mean, it's not that long. It's not white, it's grey. Do you go grey than white, or because I've gone grey, will I stay grey rather than white? It doesn't matter, I suppose. I mean, I'd just rather like to hang on to what I've got. I mean, he was bald too, the old Keeper, but very egg-like. Whereas let's not get into this. This is a very bald-in podcast, is it? What with the Fosters and their, I don't know, either bald at birth, bald through office, or it's some sort of mark of, it's sort of part of the uniform. We will distribute you with your boots and your a special Foster's jacket, and here's a razor in order to give yourself the requisite Foster's bald patch. Oh well. So listen, I've got a few comments from episode 1 that came in just after I recorded episode 2, but they're worth sharing with you, and why not, previously on Doctor Who and the Keeper of Traken. Jason Thompson says, I love this story. Such a shame that such a lush-looking production got lumbered with one of the worst VHS covers. Tom in the wrong costume with a pot plant and a blue milker is bad enough, but adding the laser beams might as well have had the words pew 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 splashed across it. Absolutely awful. Do you know what? I'd completely forgotten about the VHS cover. A lot of, obviously, the Target covers are, fixed in my head because they were such an important parts of my youth. But I never had the Keeper of Traken on VHS because my bootleg copy was, I'm afraid, good enough. So, and I was a poor student at that time. But it's not a. It's obviously I used to peruse them in the shops and covet such things, but I was a poor student, and I'm just looking at it now. It was released in the 30th anniversary, 1993. So yeah, I was slap bang in the middle of being at university. So I'm afraid I had other things to worry about. It's going for 26 quid. Because it's signed by Matthew Waterhouse. I was going to say I did have some VHSs, and I gave them all to a child. I wonder if he's still got them. I just put a thing on my Facebook when I was moving to London for what turned out to be shall we say, a boomerang trip / marriage, and I'd got DVDs by then, hadn't I? So, and I'd got everything on DVD. So I got rid of my VHSs. My official BBC VHSs. I put a thing on Facebook just saying, does anybody have a young person who would like some old Doctor Who on VHS? And this man replied and said, yeah, my son's he's got a little he's got his own VHS and monitor thing that he watches old stuff on. So he came and picked up a couple of IKEA bags full of VHSs. I thought I'd rather they went to a good home than I offloaded them, and it was getting to the point actually where charities were no longer taking VHSs. Maybe I should have hung on to them. I don't like getting rid of anything to do with Doctor Who, but it just seems wrong in principle. But I've probably hung on to some things longer than I should have done, so I think I'll take it anyway. That was, and I'm looking at that. It's not a great VHS. You're quite right. You're quite right there, Jason. It's and Tom is indeed in the wrong costume. Looks like Tom with his City of Death, or it looks like. Oh dear. Well, certainly the sort of grayer inner lapel. Certainly not the vision in burgundy that he and much of season 18 are. Chris Williams replies to Jason by saying the usually reliable Andrew Skilleter as well. Must be some story behind it. Last minute utilisation of Tom from another project and the pot plant from his studio desk. Yes, well, I mean, great art does get its inspiration from. In fact, it's not unlike a pot plant that we have in our bedroom right now. So maybe Andrew was looking forward to the future in this very podcast for his vertiginous inspiration. Jason Thompson replies, I agree, you get the point for that one. Oh, he's responding to me choosing Traken as my favourite thing for episode 1. Could have done without the rather distracting reference to your bikini line while trying to reverse off my driveway, though. I'd forgotten I'd mentioned my bikini line. I will not mention my bikini line again. No more talk of my bikini line. My bikini line is now verboten. Robbie Carnegie says, spurred on by your commentary, I watched the first episode for the first time since it was originally broadcast. My goodness, Robbie. Your comparison with the BBC Shakespeare series is very accurate. Its depiction of courtiers conducting stately conversations is very like those productions. It absolutely is, isn't it? And actually, the sort of the walk-on, supernumeraries of gathered crowds and things chattering away as people come in. That's very sort of stagey, multi-camera BBC Shakespeare-y as well. The hubbub of the mob. All right, loves, ad lib, and then Doctor Who will come in. I felt there was a bit too much, continues Robbie, telling and not enough showing, but it was nicely done. As you say, the scene between the Doctor and Adric was surprisingly relaxed and natural, as was the world building, which gives it a feel of its own. Surprising how little Nyssa was involved so far. Still, we'll look forward to episode 2. Well, that's now been done, Robbie. I'm sure has watched it. Chris Williams says, I loved season 18 and all the other seasons that are unlike any other. 7/22, and absolutely loved watching this story as a kid. It all seemed fresh and new, and I was in at the ground floor for a new TARDIS team. However, going back to it a few years ago, I found it quite boring and a bit of a drag, so I'm watching along with a positive eye. First off, I love the imagery of the Keeper in the TARDIS, and the idea of this wizened Miss Havisham popping around space in his ornate chair. It feels odd enough to be straight out of the Doctor Who weekly comic strip of the time, and can imagine him drawn by Dave Gibbons, intricately rendering his wispy beard, enlarged head, piercing eyes and talon fingernails, clutching the arms of his chair. You're spot on about Tom's performance here. He's a step up and more involved than in Warrior's Gate, and actually seems to be enjoying himself. He's been given some good material and fun banter with Adric. The scene trying to open the garden door is a nice bit of business. Also, maybe he's glad not to have that workplace relationship anymore. Smiley face. I was racking my brain to work out what the production vibe reminded me of. I'd like to agree with you and say BBC Shakespeare, but for me it's Jackanory Playhouse in an entirely affectionate way. Oh, so I'd like to agree with you and say BBC Shakespeare, but for me I think it's Jackanory Playhouse. So well, yes, maybe BBC Shakespeare is too lofty. Haha. All good so far and looking forward to part 2. Thanks, Toby. Well, thank you, Robbie. Paul Dunn says, I love this story, just so lush and stylish. I first saw this in my parents' caravan whilst away in Weston-super-Mare. The telly was a black and white portable and the picture rolled constantly. Lots of fans brandish it as dull. To me, it's pure gold. It's weird, because I don't think of these stories in black and white, but we had a black and white telly. We did not get a colour telly for a good while, and I certainly remember Castrovalva having to. Well, I'm sure I'll mention that during the commentary, but the black and white portable, the picture was rolling and rolling, and it only stabilised just before Castrovalva started. And Castrovalva is after Keeper of Traken, so yeah, I was watching all of this stuff in black and white, which seems mad now because I see it. I see it in colour. Siobhan Galichon says, I loved the idea of Traken not having a working immune system, so the Doctor is a vaccine. Yes. Gosh, Siobhan even types like the first Doctor. These are the comments on episode 2, by the way. Andrew Llewellyn says, can I be cheeky and ask, when you describe this podcast as Hugga Mugga, which of the two definitions do you mean? You meant? Aha! Well, that's for me to know and you to find out, Andrew. He's joshing anyway. Lisa and Andrew say, for some reason, when watching The Keeper of Traken on first transmission, I got it into my head that Luvic was being played by Chris Emmett of 321 fame. I remember the vague nagging subconscious concern that Dusty Bin was going to make a cameo appearance in the background. That's from Troby of Lisa and Troby. Chris Emmett, well, he was a voice on Weekending on Radio 4 for me. I'd forgotten he'd done the 321s. We did watch 321, some of which were directed by Paddy Russell, don't you know? But let's not get into that right now. Ian Key says the only episode between Horror Fang Rock and the end of Trial of a Time Lord, this is Keeper of Traken 2 for Ian, which I missed, oh no, on broadcast as I went to watch Man United play away at Leicester. We lost as well. Oh, Ian, well, that's what happens if you stand Doctor Who up and go and moonlight with Manchester United. So everyone's a loser there. Man United and Ian's viewing of The Keeper of Traken 2. So I bet you wondered what happened to John Woodnut. Jason Thompson back again says, for some reason, I always particularly liked Tom Baker's hand gestures when asking Nyssa if she happened to notice a tall blue box with a lamp on top out there. I don't remember that now. He's probably doing something silly. I agree. If it had been season 17, though, he'd have done hand gestures that he'd have done short red circle instead of tall blue box, because when he was, well, maybe, yes, 16 and 17, because he was arsing about, seeing if he can, and wanting Graham Williams to go, can you not do that? And you go, why not? Because he has many virtues, Tom, but being easy all of the time is not one of them. I agree about Seren. Woodnut makes him such an interesting character, says Jason, and in contrast to the rather limp Katura and Luvic, which I sometimes feel goes too far considering they're supposed to be at the pinnacle of this enlightened society. I think that's a fair comment, Jason. This marks him out as the obvious threat, so sadly makes it rather obvious he has to be removed. I'll defend his going along with Cassia's suggestion of accompanying him into rapport, though. At this point, he just thinks she's a slightly overzealous individual, and she's not shown any indication of being willing or able to kill anyone herself, and he certainly has no reason to think she'd be able to zap him with energy bolts from her eyes. Good point, Jason. We have been privy to Cassia's evilness, but he has not, so fair point. And Anthony Ainley as Tremus is superb throughout. It really shows just how arch he was directed to make the Master in later stories. Very true. Nev Fountain says, just as Star Trek fans labelled the movies good and bad depending on whether they were odd or even, 11-year-old me divided up season 18 in a similar fashion. Even-numbered stories, Meglos, State of Decay, Traken, I knew what was going on. Odd-numbered stories, Leisure Hive, Full Circle, Warriors Gate, Legopolis, I hadn't a bloody clue. Probably not a coincidence the even-numbered ones were all novelised by Terence. So Traken, despite a reputation for being pedestrian, was actually quite refreshing for me after the beautifully lyrical but utterly impenetrable Warriors Gate. That is a fair comment, Nev. I was a bit younger than that, but I found some of season 18 quite confusing for sure, and particularly Warriors Gate. And I wasn't wild about the sort of maths in Legopolis, and yeah, I certainly didn't understand, the science of the Leisure Hive and stuff. So yeah, I can sympathise with anybody actually that says that much of what I think we as older fans, or certainly me and the people I speak to, just so anecdotally, and looking at how these stories do now in terms of sort of popularity. Warrior's Gate, I think, is one that people love, and I love it too. But do I love it because it's impenetrable and complicated, which is what made me kind of slightly baffled by it as a kid, and is that what Doctor Who should be doing? Should it not be slightly easier for its target audience, and never mind pretentious assholes like me? Who knows? Talking of pretentious assholes, continue listening to my podcast where I'm the only person that says anything. But Nev Fountain is back. One of the many reasons I adore 18, he says, is how the stories create an arc using metaphor to reflect the themes of the show, both in front of the camera and behind the scenes. Leisure Hive, with new titles, music and direction, is about a civilization grappling with change and creating something new with flashy tricks to keep going. Full Circle, with the introduction of Adric, finally breaking up the Doctor female companion K9 TARDIS team that's lasted for almost 4 years, is about a civilization doing the same thing over and over again and trying to break out of that doom loop. Keeper of Traken is about a man preparing to leave a role he has held for a very long time and hoping in vain it will go smoothly. The Master disrupts Traken's transition, and the Doctor's too. In conclusion, Season 18 is the Finnegan's Wake of Doctor Who. We're all thinking it. Beautiful, Nev. You can tell Nev is a writer, and a very good one too. Well, I liked all of that. I do like these contributions from the listeners on Patreon, so I may as well plug the fact that if you want to be part of that, you can go to Patreon. These are free. At the point of contact, if you are a subscriber or just a listener on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, all those places. But if you want to get in early and you want to contribute as well, there is a place that you can do that, and it justifies me staying up till currently 38 minutes past midnight to to sit in a cupboard and watch Doctor Who and talk, hopefully not rubbish, about it during its duration. The duration of this episode 3 of The Keeper of Traken, is 23 minutes and 48 seconds. 23 minutes and 48 seconds. So let's see if I can find 23 minutes and 48 seconds of interesting things to say whilst you enter in rapport with me, and hopefully it'll go better than it went last time as we press play on episode 3 of The Keeper of Traken in 3, 2, 1. So I definitely remember seeing this for a second time. I think I've alluded to this at my friend Paul Sykes' house. I remember the warmth of his living room. He lived on a farm, showing a repeat of... It was either a repeat of... No, I think it was actually... I think I might have said last time it was a repeat of episode 3. I think no, because that would have just been the end. I think I came in and it was Cassia getting zapparooned, as we see at the end of this, and I was hoping it wasn't the end and was the beginning, because in those days you just turned on the telly and hoped for the best. And I think I watched part 4 maybe at theirs then, but I definitely also remember where I was when I watched part 4 originally, because I remember what happens to poor old Tremus, Anthony Ainley here, who indeed it's easy to forget about him as Tremus. It seems dissonant to me to see Anthony Ainley as Tremus in this story, because I'm so used to him as the Master, and so used to him as the enigmatic Anthony Ainley. I would love to make a documentary about Anthony Ainley. He was definitely an eccentric fellow, and I'm sure there are enough people who, at least played cricket with him, who will have some stories to tell, and I have contact certainly with one of them, and therefore probably with many more. One of them being Jonathan Keeble, brilliant radio actor, one of the best radio actors in, I would say, the world. And he is in The Ghosts of N-Space, but his connection with Ainley is that he played cricket with him. And my goodness, the stories. So... He's only stunned. You don't get stunned so much anymore, do you? It's quite often and I'm sure when I wrote stories when I was a kid, quite often I would contrive a dramatic moment only for, it's all right, they're stunned, But I think I think wisely now it is used as less of a sort of get out clause in Doctor Who, because it's a bit, now we just kill people and then that they're not dead somehow. So actually I think I prefer stunned to the various, you've killed the companion, actually they're going to come back to life, or they were never killed in the first place. I do like Roland Oliver's swagger there as he comes down the corridor as Neiman. And this, as well as stunning, I sort of grotty prison cells are the thing of Doctor Who of my childhood as well. Sort of, breathless running, not so much, but sort of skidding round corridors, prison cells, because they were held in cells in he's like Oswald in King Lear as well, isn't he? Proctor Neiman. That's a lovely shot of the Doctor through the grill of the prison gate door. That's a nicely sized corridor as well. It's just the only thing only on a Doctor Who commentary could you find somebody going, yeah, that's a good sized corridor. It's I'm not sure how I feel about that. That's a very sort of, we'll have a conversation in the corridor and then I shall go this way and you shall go that way. But yeah, there were scenes in cells, weren't there, in State of Decay? It's the penal wing, Doctor. And I like that. We haven't had use for these because we are this brilliant planet. So yeah, we do have a penal wing, but we don't. But just we need to explain why a planet held together in peace of harmony would need penal cells. So they go, oh no, these have been in disuse. Hence the large number of cobwebs. So Melker is Graham Cole, isn't he? The body is. I remember. I did have a Doctor Who magazine that had the cast list. Oh, actually, I think maybe for the Time Flight, where Graham Cole reprises his role as Melker, because it's very important. Yeah, let's not get Stephen Thorne back as Omega, but we definitely need to get Graham Cole back as Melker. Graham Cole OBE, as he is now. Oh, look at the red light on her face. And that's an excellent shot, emphasising the height of Melker and shooting down on Cassia there. And yeah, the beautiful red. She's bathing in the red glow of his baleful gaze. That's beautiful lighting. The lighting has been very good throughout the Keeper of Traken. I must remember that for when I come to assess its greatness. Oh yes, of course. So I was a bit hard on the Cassia plot, actually, which has never quite sat right for me. But actually, it's making more sense to me this time around, because yeah, okay, she ends up being the keeper, but that's not what her aim is, and she keeps trying to. This keeps running away from her, and Melker keeps demanding more of her. So. Yeah, it makes a kind of sense that it gets as out of hand as it does, and that's not her initial end game. So yeah, I think I had reservations about it in the previous two episodes, which I would now perhaps like to withdraw a certain amount of, but I don't know why it's taken me 40 years in order to see them in a different light. Well, that's because for part of this, you come to these with a different attitude, and I was interested in what was it who was it? Was it Chris? I can't remember. Doesn't matter. Apologies to whoever it was that said they were surprised. Was it Robbie? How little Nyssa did in certainly episode 1, and yes, again, knowing what we know now about Nyssa. It is interesting watching her in a story where she was designed to be a one-off character, but that scene was great where she had a little bit of agency there, and now she's off on her own doing things, and I do like that about Nyssa. She will get loads of points when I come to do Arc of Infinity. Arc of Infinity for this. Oh no, but she runs around here zapping people, doesn't she? Nyssa is Nyssa. I don't think anyone runs around zapping people quite like Nyssa does. Uh, and I've said this before, I love a laser beam in Doctor Who. It make me, you didn't have laser beams in other UK shows really, so it always felt rather special. And especially as they're wielded, they're not massive moments. It's not like in the Moon Base when it's the laser beam is the big gun against the moon. In sort of this period of Doctor Who, laser beams are just what people sort of zap out as they're charging up and down corridors. I like that. I was going to look something up, wasn't I? Oh yes, I was going to. No, I was just going to make a note of the lighting. Poor old Luvic. So they ask Cassia to become keeper, and again, that wasn't in her plans, but again, she's slightly under the thrall of Melker, who is played by Graham Cole. Graham Cole. So he was a name I'd noticed in cast lists, and then I noticed his name popping up in Doctor Who cast lists as non-speaking characters, and I don't know why I remembered his name. And then I saw him credited in the Radio Times as playing a regular in the bill, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. He's a non-speaking artist, none credited in Doctor Who, and he's suddenly a regular in the bill. Well, he was an extra in the bill. He was a supernumerary. He was a background artist who was then occasionally given the odd line, and then ultimately became a regular main character. So it just goes to show, some actors go to RADA and make their way, through the stage and into television, playing parts of different sizes here, there, and everywhere. And some people go into it, being background artists and end up being very recognisable faces. And he's very good as Tony Stamp in the bill. He was one of the sort of more proper and plausible policemen. Anyway, but I had noticed his name from Doctor Who magazine, and I'd always thought of him as Melker. So I watched the bill in order to see him, if I'm honest, because zap, love it. Love that. Well done, Nissa. She's cool. She's auditioning for Companion Academy right now, and it's a nice noise as well, the laser noise. Good look, good noise. My goodness me, Tom Baker's got snot hanging out of his nose. And he's got cobwebs on his hair. He really has. I mean, I'm assuming it looks like snot. I'm assuming it's just a bit of cobweb that he's got, and he's probably being a bit pesky. I wonder if he did that on purpose. It's not unlike him to do that, but yes, it did look originally like he'd got. I think Americans would call it a booger, but yes. Anyway. You probably wouldn't. You'd probably get rid of that now, but I quite like it. Beautiful corridors, beautifully lit. I always think of Tony Burrow's beautifully lit sort of corridors and spaceship stuff in Fort of Doomsday, but actually this is sympathetically done as well, and they're nice and spacious. Tony Burrow, very, very good designer. Do have a listen to my the only audio interview I think anyone's got with Tony Burrow, which is hanging around these here parts somewhere. Beautiful work, and I find all of this very comforting. This is very much the Doctor Who of my youth. Corridors, burgundy, laser guns. I mean, not all burgundy, because season 18 was the new way of doing things, and I wasn't of course I wouldn't miss Doctor Who, and I love Doctor Who, but it was I was already worried it wasn't quite the show that I'd imagined it would be, because it was all science and burgundy, and I wasn't necessarily sure that's what I was after. But now for me it is very, very comforting and nostalgic, and I still think of these as fairly new. Liam Prendergast is the Foster. We've tried to find him, failed. In fact, I just got his details via Richard Bignell bless him, he was doing something at the BBC Written Archive, and I'd sent him an inquiry saying, here's a few of the actors I don't know anything about, and he got me his details, and it's basically a couple of addresses, and that's it. Addresses from 1981 or whenever. I go, no, of course that's recent. 1981's not that long ago at all, because this is still to me sort of quite new Doctor Who. Anyway, the lighting is Don Babbage, who I must make a note of. I mean, it's all good stuff. Amy Roberts does the costumes, and Amy has. I think she's featured in the Radio Times 20th anniversary special alongside the aforementioned Tony Burrow. That's why I thought there'd probably be loads of interviews with him, because there's a picture of him, because he happens to be who they talk to. Dorka Neoradzik, there's a picture of her as well. There's a whole section of sort of going behind the scenes and talking to the artisans behind the scenes, and they talk to Amy Roberts. So those people, Amy and Dorka and Tony, I thought, oh, well, they've given interviews, so I sort of put them to the back of my mind, even though they're only very short in that. And it's only, 40 years later that you go, yeah, they're not very long interviews. And I did end up interviewing Dorka, and she's sadly no longer with us. Amy Roberts, I spoke to at a convention, I think the only convention she's done. I tried to get her for Who's Round, and she'd been too busy. BAFTA kindly put me in touch. A lovely chap at BAFTA called Jim Bradshaw, who basically contacted various Doctor Who people, under BAFTA's banner in order to help out with Who's Round. What a nice man. And she was too busy. And then I met her at a convention, and she seemed up for doing an interview, even though she was working on The Crown at the time. And we nearly arranged something, but she was up to her ears at the time that I could have met up with her, and I sort of dropped the ball. Maybe I need to get back in touch with her, because she's not done any interviews or appearances since. And again, I probably think it was quite recently that she and I are in contact, but it's probably 10 years. I like the way that Tom Baker drills at Tremas there and goes, yeah, of course, well, let's put ourselves in danger for the sake of your honour. I mean, it's a I think Tremas is coming from a reasonable point of view. He has principles and about his honour, but the Doctor is, look at him, he's a far away and distant Time Lord. He hasn't got time for such fripperies as honour when the universe is at stake, and sometimes we need that. And that was Tom doing real Olympian detachment, which then, as soon as he gets what he wants, he turns on the sort of friendly flippancy again. It speaks to a cussed personality, which I think is not a million miles away for how Tom Baker himself can be sometimes, where he won't make things easy for you, but then when he is comfortable, he will make it fun and delightful. That's what makes him a great Doctor Who, and I think that's what makes him, occasionally I would say a challenge to work with. But I certainly can see how useful it is as the Doctor. But his Doctor is sometimes tricky. His performance choices are sometimes tricky too. But I think he's good here. He's by no means perfect. Partially because of, I think, he's one of those actors that is somebody who will try things, and will sometimes try things out of spite, and will challenge and will push. And if handled properly, that can, get some really good stuff out of him. My argument would always be, why don't you just do the good stuff anyway? Anyway, why'd you have to make it difficult? But it also means if he's not sort of controlled, as is sometimes the case in season 16 and 17, I think it leads to some choices where you go, yeah, I wish I hadn't done that. But I think in season 18, I know a lot of people don't like his performance in season 18 because he's sort of drawn and a bit withdrawn sometimes, and a bit. I've seen some people say it's like he's not engaged with it. I think he always gives of himself. He's just sometimes a bit mournful, but that kind of adds to the funerary, fraying aspect of season 18, where it does feel like, for all this opulence and for all of the mathematics, it's sort of papering over the cracks in an era that's about to sort of fall apart. So it kind of works. Look at that lighting. Don Babbage, this is really good. These shafts of light here, you got Nyssa and Tremas in the light, the Doctor and Adric in the shadow. That's very good stuff. And I like the way they think about elements of this, that we don't even see the Keeper in this episode. His demise is represented by a flame, which is nice symbolism. But I like the fact that they have this stuff about the death being agonizing, that there's a thought to actually how this stuff happens. Often in science fiction, the sort of human cost, even on just a basic level of experience or comfortableness or whatever, is not really thought of, which is why I like it when somebody transforms into a monster or something, if they scream because it's painful. I was listening to a podcast about The Thing, because I've just done one, and I was listening to somebody else do one and being clever on it, and they talked about, which I didn't talk about in the one I've done. I like the way he's scratched his forehead there, Roland Oliver. But this other podcast about The Thing talked about how the creature screams whenever it manifests itself because it's actually changing shape, and this is painful. It's like a sort of birth, but it's birthing itself. And the thought that sort of goes into that these aren't just sort of concepts or story ideas. They're actually things that have a physical physical response. Oh, and I like this. This is a very and that's a great zap, because he sort of holds him and shoots him at close range. I love this. Again, it's very stagey, and they're having to do, instead of Star Trek spaceship acting, it's Doctor Who wind acting, and they're giving it a bash. But I mean, that's. Yeah, poor old. I mean, Margot van der Burr is not a young woman there, so she's not able to contort in perhaps the way that you would really want. She'd probably have, fallen over. But again, that's wonderful lighting, and there's an interesting sort of lens or framing of that what it does to her face. But I like this. I like that the flame representing the Keeper, and then the wind representing. The parlous state that the fabric of Traken is in, and that the weather is a sort of manifestation of that. It just goes to show how important the Keeper is. You need a Keeper in order to stop the wind. What is the Gaviscon of Traken or whatever? And that's really nice, because dramatically it ups the stakes. And in terms of program making, you have sound and physical reactions and a wind machine as well to give you dramatic sort of build up to the cliffhanger. Well, as you think, because then you go, oh no, it's okay. She stopped the wind. So actually, I thought we were going to get a cliffhanger with it all being windy and destructive, but I like that, not looking at the eyes. Tom Baker does that very well. You see, he's very good in this, Tom Baker. But yes, so we've had the calmness, because so it was almost a false cliffhanger there, because it felt like the episode was building to a climax. But then we have a little sort of whispered warning from Melker to the Doctor, and I like the way that Tom Baker yelled at him. Then we only saw it from afar, and the flame is up, and everything's okay. And oh my God, if you've been watching Doctor Who for a while, that looks like the Master. We'll talk about his teeth on his lips, if they are, next time, I'm sure, because we'll see him a bit more. But yes, so that's the reveal, that it's the Master, if you are so inclined. I didn't know, and I think I must have been watching this on my own. I don't remember my brothers talking to me about the Master until sort of Logopolis and Castrovalva time, really. So for this meant nothing to me. Who the Master was meant nothing to me. Katura hasn't got a bald patch, has she? She's not a foster. She's just got a flat bit on the top. So yes, and I like that sort of fact that it sort of seems quiet and calm, but actually it's just because we needed to get her in there so that Melka, the master, could appear in the throne for what is... Oh, I like it. Doesn't he say, it's too late, Treema's far too late? I like the way he does that. And that's the sort of thing you have to say at a cliffhanger. Melka controls the source of the Keeper of Traken. So that was great. So much in that was rather fun. I'm enjoying this a lot more than I expected to. Sarah Sutton is not a regular yet, so she is further down the credits, although very interesting things happen to the credits in late season 18 and throughout season 19 in terms of the regulars. But this is not Nissa. Oh, and I like the fact that even though he's bottom of the credits because of the way that they've worked it, Melka, Jeffrey Beavers, gets the single slide. So yeah, you're at the bottom, but actually there's people before you who have to share their billing with someone else. Those sorts of things are very important. Not all actors, but to me, I can see. But I could probably do a dissertation on the patterns of Doctor Who credits and anomalies. I've done a podcast about credit orders and anomalies because, well, we all have our things that we think are beautiful. So that is the end of part 3 of The Keeper of Traken. I have to see what Dr. Tom likes about it. But before I do, I have to decide what I like about it. Well, I'm very much liking Don Babbage's lighting. I mean, I've we've sort of covered design. Poor old Tony Burrett and Amy Roberts got lumped in, didn't they, with the whole Traken? Well, I chose Traken as a cousin, but I think Dr. Tom, when he was assessing the virtues of Traken, he sort of lumped in the whole aesthetic, because I think both Tony Burrett and Amy Roberts could easily be chosen. That their contributions to this episode would be the best things about it, or about the story. So I can't choose those, but I don't think, because Babbage's lighting, he has to light that outside grove. And it's funny, we've been watching the Happiness Patrol recently at the BFI, and I haven't seen the special edition yet, but I understand it feels much more like an outside there. And I have to say, I did feel like watching it when I was younger, and the modern viewing did nothing to shake that it was in a sort of Mega City 1 interior sort of tower block kind of streets, rather than what it's supposed to be, which is supposed to be outside. It doesn't look outside. Now, it's quite abstract and expressionistic, the Happiness Patrol, so it can kind of get away with it. But you're not kidding anyone that it's outside. They're at least trying to suggest outside here. I still would say there's an aesthetic that goes, we know that we're not outside, but we're going to suggest it with gobos and with the what we like the studio sky with, and by trying to give it a bit of height. We're at least making an effort, and you have to come with us and do the rest. And I think the lighting is part of that. But elsewhere, the lighting, that red lighting on Cassia's face, the lighting up behind the throne, the shadows in those corridors. There's some beautiful lighting, and some of the night scenes in the previous episodes I thought were really beautifully lit. So let's say honourable mentions for, I love a laser beam. I love Nyssa. I love the fact that Nyssa gets some agency, actually, and that she comes up with that idea, and she takes it upon herself to zap the guards. She doesn't just come and zap them. She does a bit of manipulation of Neiman first. I also love the really brutal way that the Doctor grabs Neiman and sort of shoots him at close range in the chest. That's pretty horrible. I mean, fortunately, it's set to stun, but it's a pretty brutal maneuver. But I'm comforted by, I love the sort of safe action of running around, because laser beams, they don't leave any effect. Now, of course, again, in real life, and I would probably congratulate a story where people would then, show their bruises from where the laser beam had hit them. Perhaps Neiman would have a big bruise and blister on his chest that he'd want vengeance for in episode 4 if this was the Mon show, or his clothes would have been burnt or something like that. But no, this is then, and this is what one came to expect, and perfectly workable and fine at the time, of the, you zap somebody and they fell over, but it didn't kill them. So you had all the fun of the sort of action adventure. You had a laser gun like they had in Star Wars and things like that, and nobody was killed. So it's a really useful and stress-free way of having some sort of fun shooty pew 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 stuff, and I love that. I mean, I'm sure when I come to do Arc of Infinity, one of my favourite things will be about it will be Nyssa zapping, running around corridors zapping people with a staser. And so yes, I love Nyssa's agency. I love the laser beam zapping, and I love the wind. I do. I love that sequence where suddenly, that's quite Shakespearean, actually. I've been thinking about the Scottish play recently because it keeps popping up in my Facebook feed because two wonderful actors, Ralph Fiennes and Indira Varma, toured it, and it's now streaming, and I keep watching clips, and I need to watch the whole production because it's the play that made me want to be an actor, and I love Ralph Fiennes and I adore Indira Varma, and I think it's a great play, but it's a play that has often scuppered the best of actors. They only did it in Liverpool, and I didn't get over to see it. And it's one of those things now that I go, it's not that far, Toby. You could have done it. But anyway, I can watch it streamed, but it's not the same as seeing it live. However, in that play, when Duncan is killed, his horses, it is said they ate each other, and there's so much about what happens in that play that is about the act of killing the king being against nature, and it causes barren scepters to be in people's grips. It kills nature, as if there is a sort of natural order that can be upset by malfeasance or by egregious deeds done by people. We small pathetic things go against the natural order at our peril. Now you can see that as being sort of quite monarchist and quite feudal, and the attitude of somebody wishing serfdom upon, if not themselves, others. But I also like the idea that a great act, a wicked murder, a wicked deed, is so wicked it's not just legally bad, it is against the very forces of nature, and we harm the world around us if we do bad things. We upset the natural order of the universe if we commit evil deeds. The evil that men do is awful, but it is also an offence to nature, which is of course good and verdant and prosperous and life-giving. So I love the fact that, when the Keeper goes, all hell breaks loose, because nature, which is a fragile thing, and that speaks to our ecosystem as well, but that's a different point. But nature is sort of knocked off kilter a little bit, and the wind blows, and it makes the actors have to sort of throw themselves about, and it makes the Doctor and Nyssa and Tremas's and Adric's journey towards the throne room all the more difficult, because they're being buffeted around the globe, around the grove by nature sort of kicking off. And I really like that. That speaks to me, and it's a relatively simple thing to do. It's not entirely 100% convincingly carried off, because it's hard to do with actors in a multi-camera studio, but they give it a bash, and good luck for them. And I actually think the guys in the Grove really do give it a go. There's a bit where Nyssa sort of flies around the Doctor that's quite, they've thrown themselves into it slightly more so than sort of Margot van der Burg, bless her. She reminds me a bit of when Shez is trying to get off the tram and people are standing in front of the door, and she sort of goes, can I get past? And they just sort of lean sideways a bit, and I have to go, no, you're going to need to get out of the way. It's my pet hate that when people are, or when people are standing in the sort of wheelchair bit, and you say, do you mind just moving? And they just sort of lean to one side. You go, no, you're actually going to have to move. I'm sorry. I get. You can hear what I sound like. I suspect people go, what's his problem? It's the fact that I have to ask grown people to do the bleeding obvious. Shirley, who's the one who is the wheelchair user, is much more relaxed about it, but she's got her way through life smiling, whereas I've got my way through life grumbling internally and wishing revenge upon people when I get home. I guess I'm thinking evil thoughts inside a calcified frame. I am the master in Melka. Anyway, I'm Graham Cole. Graham Cole OBE, because he used his platform in the bill to do lots of work for charity. So good for him. So I do like that wind, and I actually thought I just made a very convincing case for the wind there. I do like the windy bit. And I don't think Dr. Tom is going to choose the lighting for this particular episode, because again, I think he probably lumped all of that in with the aesthetic. I also like Proctor Neiman. I think he's great fun. I like Nyssa getting her agency and zapping too. Do I try and play a cunning game and go, what do I think Dr. Tom will choose? Because it is 1-1 at the moment. Or should I be true to myself? Should I leave my honour intact and just choose what I think is the best thing? I don't think he'll choose the lighting, you see. And I love the lighting. The lovely lightning. No. I'm gonna choose Nyssa and her lasering and any related lasering that happens. Am I? No. Or am I choosing the wind? This is a story I've never particularly thought that highly of. And I'm struggling between three things. Not because it's an embarrassment of riches, maybe, but because I'm trying to play tactically. Oh, what do I choose? The wind? He's going to choose something completely different now, isn't he? He's going to choose, like, Cassia's hair, or a line I talked, a really brilliant line that I was giving you, Graham Cole's CV. Not just Graham Cole's CV, Graham Cole's CV through the prism of my own experiencing of it, which, even as I describe that, I think, is that really what people listen to podcasts for? But I suspect what people listen to podcasts for really isn't this. So, I'm gonna go for. I'm gonna go. Let's not complicate it. I'm gonna go for Don Babbage's lighting because it is superb.
Episode 3. The high point of this episode is Nyssa and the way that she emerges as a strong character. Although armed with the ion bonder, she does come across a little bit like K9. She's bright, resourceful, full of potential and drive, and her relationship with Adric appears strong from the outset. And the slow gathering of the Season 20 TARDIS crew is fascinating to observe in its early stages. Sheila Ruskin does threaten to steal the show again, and we love the image of the Fendal-style eye makeup.
I'm never going to be true to myself again. It's a terrible way to be. It never gets you anywhere. Damn, I was so close. Well, there we go. I concur, Dr. Tom. Nyssa and the Iron Bonder is I hadn't thought about her being a sort of de facto K9, but it's very true. But unlike K9's laser beams, these ones don't go off at silly angles. At least they managed to sort of line them up properly, which I thought was always a fault of K9. Wherever his nose was pointing, the laser would sort of shoot upwards or whatever. Dash and core blimey. So near and yet so far. So I've just got to get his thing for episode 4 and his bonus thing, and I could still win this. But there was a moment there when I flirted with success. But once again, as is the story of my life, I came within a sniff of success. I then managed to bugger it up for myself. But enough about my own CV. Well, there we go. I hope you enjoyed episode 3 of The Keeper of Traken, and it wasn't just a load of old wind, but if it was, I hope it was the sort of dramatic wind that you enjoy experiencing, or I certainly do anyway. But until next time, thanks very much, and I hope you enjoy this transition, which I hope isn't too agonizing and painful. Thanks very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Haydock, and my special guest, Dr. Tom Atter, who can be found on Twitter or X as @TomAtter. I'm grateful to Tom and to the patrons that have made these podcasts possible, and they include John Davey, Rob Dawson, Paul Philip Dahlgren, Simon Curtis, Dave Cullen, Steve Cunniff, David Crew, Sarah Crotzer, Oliver Crocker, Philip Craggs, Ben Cowdell, Leslie Coots, Matt Corner, Martin Cook, Ben Cook, Simon Coling, Cole, Charles Coffin, Mark Cockram, Graham Cluley, Kevin Clark, Steve Churchill, Susan Christian, Ralph Chilton, Phil Chapman, Damien Cartin, Anthony Carroll, Paul Carrington, Jim Cameron, DC, and Rebecca Burgess. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you too would like to become a patron, you can go to patreon.com/Toby Haydock, where for as little as £3 a month you get advance releases, bonus material, a podcast all of your very own, monthly Ask Me Anythings, usually twice monthly now actually, all of your very own. They're exclusives, never released anywhere else. Updates of my Who's Round podcast, behind the scenes glimpses of DVDs and Blu-rays and other things that I get up to. That's all on Patreon, and it starts at £3 a month. You get a 10% discount if you sign up for a year in one go. You can also sponsor my endeavours in a one-off fashion if you go to ko-fi.com/Toby Haydock if you've particularly enjoyed something but don't want to do the monthly commitment. And if financial ways of support are outside of your remit, I totally understand. I am just grateful to you for listening, but what you could do is you could like, you could subscribe, you could give all those internet algorithms a good old tweak so that they stick out with so much tumescence that they get the attention of any passing trade who might wish to sample its wares and then become a regular demander of the contents herein. I think that metaphor managed to stay just this side of acceptable. So like, subscribe, give reviews as well if you could. 5 stars really, really help, and any nice lines describing what you get here and saying what you like about them, well, that just helps, and it will just cost you a little of your time that I would be grateful to you for spending on my behalf. You can find me in all the social media places, Twitter, and I've got two areas of Twitter I hang out, at Haydock Podcasts, which is stuff just about these podcasts, and at Toby Haydock, where you get that, but you also get other Doctor Who related stuff, and you also get things about my acting work and my comedy, and just sort of sometimes even a joke. I know I sometimes do a joke, or at least something that is a mildly diverting observation about something. It's usually a reference to an actor that was in something in 1972, but I mean, I'll occasionally get my hands dirty with a pun. I'm also on Facebook. Go to my Facebook page, not my personal Facebook. I'm gradually just having that for people that I actually know, but I still operate the other page, which is I don't like the word. I'm not going to use the word the phrase fan page, because I don't think that's a thing that would apply to me. But it's a page where all stuff about my work and related stuff, you know, if you're sort of wanting to know the stuff I'm doing and the stuff I'm in and yeah, what I'm up to in a professional capacity, that's the place you can go. It's the one that's illustrated by a black and white picture of me looking apologetic with a hat. And I'm also on Instagram, where I'm, learning about putting videos out there, and some of my comedy stuff goes out there, and any sort of visual content that I might have, I'm popping on there with increasing ambition and regularity. So who knows? One day I might put a movie on there, and that's at toby.haydock on Instagram. And there we go. I wasn't sure I would get to the hour with this one, but I have. I'm sure these were designed to be about 25 minutes long, the length of the episode. But I've gradually, the bookends have got more substance to them than the novels they contain. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but actually we've got some nice bookends in this house. I like a nice bookend. So for a while we didn't have enough shelves with which to use the bookends, or the bookends were just in boxes and stuff. But gradually we're getting to the point where we can use our. Aren't you fascinated? You've hung on to this. We've finally, at the age of 50, been able to use our bookends properly, and in fact, there's possibly still room to get the odd extra bookend in order to augment the shelving that we're having putting in order to make the house look nicer, because we have a number of rooms where everything's just it looks like the penal wing of Traken, to be honest. I'm a 50-year-old man and we still have 2 rooms that are just full of sort of junk that is, we'll sort that out at some point. When's the point going to be? I'm 50. I'm going to be I mean, it needs to be in a reasonable state and not look like it's a temporary measure for at least a decent portion of the time that I'm alive, and that is getting increasingly less likely. So I don't know quite, because I'm still, I don't know, I still think I'm a bit like a bloody student, when it didn't matter that things were temporary and some of the stuff you had was in boxes and shoved in corners and all of that sort of thing. But I go to people's houses now and they have shelves that have one thing on. They've got all their books are in the right place. I don't even close drawers. Oh dear. So yes, what this is, I need to grow up. Is what I need to do. And stop getting excited by somebody charging around zapping people with an iron bonder. But no, I certainly need to get. This is just like a psychology session, isn't it? Where I'm just talking to nobody. But it is consolidating what my subconscious knows. That is that those 2 rooms are simply not accessible. Acceptable. There's only 2 of us in this house. They're not accessible either because they're full of bloody junk. There's only 2 of us in this house. If we're not using it, throw it away. Yeah, but then it might come in useful. And as I talked about at the beginning, I have got rid of the odd thing, and it still does gnaw at my heart a little bit. And I know the minute I did it with a bit of skirting board, because we had somebody coming around helping us, and she said, "What's this bit of skirting board? Get rid of it. You hoard too much, right? All right, fine. Get rid of it." Not realising it was the bit of skirting board from the room upstairs that had been taken off and cut in order to get some piping to a radiator, and we'd kept it because it needs to go back in that place, and it's got the right cuts to fit exactly because that's where it came from. And now we're going to have to get a new bit of skirting board which won't fit quite so exactly because it's not the bit that we took. So the one time I did throw something away, it was a disaster. That's all I'm saying. Never throw anything away. And then you just have a room full of rubbish. So I'll go and tidy that. Not now, but it is on our plans to do before Christmas, is getting the house straight. And I suspect when I tidy one of those rooms, I will end up with a piece of dust hanging from my nose, like Tom Baker at his pesky prison cell best.